To Spotlight now. Well, Paul Brubaker did a little table setting for us and gave us a broad scope of the economy overall. We're welcoming now Sherry Menor. She is, of course, the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii. 13 years at the helm, 2 decades with the chamber. So we know you know your stuff. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm curious, we heard sort of broad strokes from Paul, but what are you hearing from your members in terms of what it's like to run a business in Hawaii right now?
Oh, it's just getting increasingly challenging. With the climate here, the business climate has always been one of the worst places to do business. In fact, one of the rankings, the CNBC ranking, they put Hawaii last, or sometimes at 49. In fact, 15 years ago, we invited the author of that survey and talked about where Hawaii ranks and why. Fast forward 15 years later, we had him at our State of Economy event in January, and guess what? Nothing has changed. So obviously we are not moving the needle as fast as we should be. In fact, we're not at all, because we continually face 50th or 49. So in that sense, structurally, the cost of doing business has always been challenging. You factor in what's going on politically, economically, everything that's going in natural disasters. Cumulatively, that just makes it and compounds the challenges on small businesses. And that's why we're seeing some of them just deciding, you know what, we're done.
Wow.
They reached that tipping point, and there's only so much cost that they can absorb.
And, we know that businesses in here in Hawaii, they went through the tariffs early on.
Yes.
Now the increase in oil prices. Of course, the minimum wage did increase, and that has a big impact on local businesses as well. If there was one factor you think that they're facing, what would it be?
Oh, it's the uncertainty of everything, because it's just so fluid. There's so fluid with different changes. And so it's hard to provide that kind of certainty so that businesses can plan out ahead. So there's all these disruptions that are going on that makes it more challenging. And so if there's some level of certainty that can happen, then at least it'll be less challenging. But in today's world, that doesn't seem like that's a constant.
Yeah. What sectors are you seeing that are hit the hardest right now?
I don't think there's one sector that's immune from all of this, because in some sense we're codependent on each other in terms of the sectors. We say the construction is one of the more resilient ones right now. However, taking in tariffs, the supplies that come in, that's going to be increasing. So that adds on to the cost. So there's really no one sector that we identify that's facing more challenges. With that said, more broadly, it's more the small businesses. Yes, big businesses, and I did hear Paul earlier, no one is immune, but big businesses can, to a certain extent, absorb and redirect some of the resources. We're talking about the small businesses, less than 20 employees, that each dollar counts. And so that's where we're seeing, at least what we're hearing, the most impact.
I know that the Chamber has been very vocal about permitting reform and the fact that we have so many regulations on businesses here in Hawaii. When you think about the expert that you were saying that you brought in and thinking about no change over the 15 years, is that part of the issue too?
Yes, and one of the things that we launched a couple of years ago is our 2030 Blueprint, which is an economic action plan, and it's very data-driven. So we looked at all the data out there and determined, okay, what will work? And so now our plan is to move this economic action plan forward, and identified 6 areas where there are opportunities for Hawaii to turn the course of our business climate. And those are tourism and military. Obviously, that's the number 1 and 2 industry. We cannot just leave it behind because they are huge economic drivers. It's more about how do you think different, and that's what Paul referenced earlier. Continue to invest in it, but how do we make technology, make these industries become better? How do we train a workforce to prepare them for the future jobs in these industries? Other areas, business services, so that deals with more cost of living, and 21st century ag and maritime. We have these industries here, but what can we do to strengthen it? And even your HERO report identified those 2 areas of opportunities. And then finally, small business and entrepreneurship. How do we fill the gaps in the ecosystem? Wall Street Journal came up with a study that more of the younger generation are bypassing colleges because they feel that AI will replace some of the positions that they're studying for, and turning more into entrepreneurship. And so if that's the case, how can we ensure that we are ready to support these emerging entrepreneurs and create a climate that they can survive and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm curious about is workforce here in Hawaii. We hear a lot about people leaving the state because of the high cost of living.
Yes.
Just anecdotally, some of the restaurants that I go to now, either they stop serving lunch or they stop serving dinner because they're just like, we don't have the staff. And even some retail stores, some smaller boutiques,
Yes.
are closing more days. I'm not that much of a shopaholic, but I do get around. And it's just very difficult to see because obviously they're still paying rent even on the times that they're closed. What are you hearing
Yes.
about the labor issues here in Hawaii right now?
Yes, that's one of the constant. It's been a challenge no matter what kind of business, what size business. They're seeing the workforce challenges, having a prepared workforce. And so from a long-term perspective, that's what the chamber, as well as the public sector, including the universities, community colleges, DOE, government, as well as different community organizations coming together and adopting a unified plan to come up and address the workforce challenges and ensure that the future workforce is prepared for the types of jobs that will evolve. From a short-term perspective, yeah, it continues to be a challenge to find the workers.
We just ended the legislative session. Do you feel like lawmakers are understanding? I know that you put a lot of work into the blueprint. I've read the blueprint, very extensive, and a lot of data behind it. But do you feel like lawmakers have been responding to what businesses need right now?
Yeah, I think that's why it's important to ensure the business voice continues to be heard. And with this blueprint, help be that guiding factor with legislators, but we need to do more. This past legislative session, we're so appreciative of the legislature passing a bill that we've been trying for years, and that's a micro lending bill, because one of the top challenges for smaller business is access to capital. And so this bill addresses that. So we're appreciative of that. There's been more bills relating to workforce development. So recognizing that internships, apprenticeships will also be key in filling the workforce gaps as well as preparing the future workforce. So yes, we are seeing that momentum, but obviously we can all do more. And that's why it's important to work together in partnerships and more collaboration with both public and private sector.
Yeah, when we think about how best to support the economy, I'm curious, we just talked about what the lawmakers can do, but what about on an individual level? We hear a lot about buying local and how important it is to buy local, but
Yes.
I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yes, and we always encourage buy local first because we want to keep the monies in here. We want to keep it circulating. We want to support one another. But that's why it's even more critical to ensure that we create that kind of business climate so that entrepreneurships, local businesses can survive and thrive.
What about federal contracts? We know that you are heading up to Washington shortly
Yes.
for Hawaii on the Hill. For
Yes.
folks who are not familiar, tell us a little bit about that initiative and why it's so important.
Yes, it's our 10th annual Hawaii on the Hill. It's in partnership with Senator Hirono. So it was every state does a taste of event. Hawaii did not do one up until 2000. 10 years ago. And, we felt that it was important to bring Hawaii to the Hill to let our congressional leaders know that, okay, Hawaii may be small in size, but we are contributing to the nation's economy. And so over the year, it's grown. This year, we're bringing 250 plus people from Hawaii, which the first year, we only brought 50 people. So it has grown significantly, and many of the participants are small businesses that have gone for year one. And that's what's inspiring, is because they're paying their own way, donating their goods and services, and covering costs. But they recognize it's, yes, important to them to be in a nation's capital so they can learn more about the resources. But more importantly, work together and showcase Hawaii with a unified front.
Yeah, I love that. When you think about what Paul laid out, basically we are looking at a year of inflation and kind of more of the same. What is your biggest concern for our economy, especially when it comes to small businesses?
Oh, geez, just survival. I mean, there's so many different drivers that are making it much more challenging for businesses. So, I can't pinpoint one because there's so many pain points, I should say. And it's housing. I know he identified housing, but it's also the lack of diversification. UHERO did a report, and it did say that Hawaii, the wages have not gone up since the 1990s, and we're seeing that outmigration. But big reason for it is because of the lack of economic diversification. And that is why we believe the 2030 blueprint will be critical to start moving that needle, to start expanding our economic base so we can create a much more healthy and resilient economy.
We know that the blueprint's on your website. I would love to
Yes.
invite folks to go take a look at it. Can you tell us your website?
Yes, cochawaii.org.
Okay, wonderful. Sherry, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
you.
I would love a final thought from you as you head up to Washington. You know, you deal with these business owners day in, day out, and we know that these are some of the hardest working people in Hawaii for sure.
Oh yes, hardest working and as well as very resilient. So facing challenges, but in this environment in Hawaii, we support one another. And we see it all over. We saw it during the pandemic. We saw it during natural disasters. And you know, we see it day to day, and so that's why it's going to be even more critical to continue to connect with each other and to work with each other to find solutions that will be viable and long term.
Yeah. Well, thank you for advocating for the best of us in
you.
Washington. We appreciate it, and thanks for sharing your perspective today.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We're going to be talking about job training in the world of healthcare, perhaps an opportunity for you or someone you know. We'll be right back.